Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are all doing really well. So today I'm gonna do a tag. I haven't done a tag in a long time, and everyone typically does this tag every year, but this is my first year doing it. So we're gonna do the mid-year book freakout tag. I saw my friend Nakia over at Nakia's Hideaway do it, I think last week, and I was just compelled to do it this time around. So we're gonna jump into that in a second, but first I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry that I've been so inconsistent with my videos lately. So I've been doing YouTube now for a couple of years, and I don't think I've ever been so inconsistent with my videos. It's just, I got a promotion at work and I'm trying to learn how to balance new things with that, with still videoing, and I've been kind of slumpy with my reading. And I don't know if any other booktubers out there are feeling the same way, but if you find if you're in a reading slump, then it makes you feel really bad because you're supposed to be reading because you're a booktuber. I set my goal at 50 books this year, which is very reasonable. I usually read between 50 and 100 books. I set it at 50 this year and I'm already at 30 something. So I know it's just my mind and my negative self-talk that's getting in the way, but I don't know. I've been really struggling, you guys. I don't know what's up this year. So we're gonna do a tag. It's really fun. It hopefully will help me kind of get myself out of this kind of funk that I've been in. And in my next video, actually, I have planned that I'm going to talk about short horror, because short books is what's been saving me this year. I've been reading tons of short books, anthologies, that sort of thing, to try to get me out of this slumpy feeling that I've been in. So we're going to discuss short horror coming up in the next video as well, and hopefully I can get back into the swing of doing my 2 videos a week. So yeah, just wanted to apologize for being so all over the place with everything. I think the news is kind of getting me in a funk too. I mean, we know that there's been stuff going on recently that's kind of getting everybody down, so there's been a bit of that as well. But let's stop talking about negative stuff and get right into this tag, because I'm so excited to talk to you again about some of the books that I've read so far this year. So question number 1, and I've been ranting about this book since I read it. So question number 1 is the best book so far in 2022. The best book that I've read. It doesn't have to be a new release, but I'm gonna go with In Every Generation by Kendara Blake. So I've talked about, like I said, this book several times on the channel. I've talked about it constantly on my Instagram page. I've gotten other booktubers to read this book. This was such a gem for me to read this year. I think it's the only book so far that I've read in 2022 where I really felt like I couldn't wait to get back to it. I couldn't wait to dive back into the story and the adventure of Frankie and the new Scoobies in Sunnydale. So I've heard some other booktubers talk about this as well, that we really think that this is the new season 8 of the show. We're just forgetting about all of the other fan fiction that's been written, all of the comics, all of that. Like, this really truly feels like Sunnydale. So if you're new to my channel and you haven't picked up this book and you haven't heard me talk about it before, give this a try if you're a Buffy fan. It's really well done, and I'm going to continue talking about this probably during the rest of 2022 as well. And question number 2 is the best sequel that I've read so far this year. I think this is the only sequel that I've read so far this year. And just luck has it that I really enjoyed this. So it is The Ravenous Dead by Darcy Coates, and this is the 2nd book in the Gravekeeper series. And I actually liked book 2 in this series far more than I liked book 1. So book 1 was good. It was, you know, your typical 3-star kind of Darcy Coates read, and book number 2 was fantastic. I believe I gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It really got into that story, and we start to learn about Kira's abilities and more about her past and stuff like that, and it really starts to get into the story. I really enjoyed this one. The only thing, and I mentioned this when I talked about it in one of my wrap-ups, I would love to see Darcy Coates break out of her template that she uses. She pumps out a lot of books. She writes a lot of books, but what I find is it all follows the same template. Like, if I'm reading it on my Kindle and it gets to a certain percentage, I know kind of what sort of thing is going to be coming up in the story. Like the plot lines and what happens is different, but it's very much the same template. So I'd love to see her break out of that a little bit. So really looking forward to book 3 in this series. It's not coming out until next year in 2023, but really looking forward to it, and I'm hoping she breaks out of that template that she follows a little bit. And book number 3 is a new release book that you haven't read yet but want to. I actually received a copy of this in the mail just the other day. So this is Mandy by Stephanie Sparks, and she very kindly sent this to me. I reached out to her for a copy because I've been so enjoying her books, and she very kindly sent me a copy, and it is inscribed on the inside, which was fantastic. I love getting books like this in the mail. And Stephanie Sparks has been such a go-to author for me. I read my first book by her last year. It was called Kill the Babysitter, and I've enjoyed all of her books since. And it's really great because her books are also extremely short as well. So this one, it's about 125 pages, so you can't go wrong. Her writing is fast-paced, it's twisty-turny. She's the queen of kind of that twist ending. You're not really sure, and it kind of comes out of nowhere. So really super excited to read this book. So this follows a girl named Mandy, obviously, and she has the ability to speak to the dead and bring people back from the dead. So in the middle of the night, one night, she gets a knock on her door, and this man is beside himself because they've been in a car accident and his best friend has died. I believe he was killed by a drunk driver. So he knows of Mandy's abilities, and he asks her to bring him back from the dead, basically. And Mandy doesn't know, but this man that she brings back from the dead is an abuser, and he's violent and all of these things. And so he has to come up against her, and he's not sure of her abilities either. So there's this kind of battle of good and evil. It sounds really, really good. I can't wait to pick this up. I'm thinking probably in the next day or two I'm going to be picking this one up. So keep an eye on the channel for a review of Mandy by Stephanie Sparks. And question number 4 is the most anticipated book on your list from the second half of 2022. So there's tons of horror books coming out that I would love to read, but we were just speaking about sequels when we were talking about The Ravenous Dead, and I think the one that I'm going to pick for this question is Clown in a Cornfield 2 Friendo Lives by Adam Caesar. And I read Clown in a Cornfield last year, and it was good. I really liked it. I said that there was something that happened in the book that I wish had been dealt with a little bit differently, but before I read Friendo Lives, I want to go back and read the first book, because a couple of booktubers actually commented on my video and they said, I saw that coming all the way through. I saw that coming and I didn't. So I actually want to reread Clown in a Cornfield and then continue on with the story, because you know, all of that aside, that one subplot, it was a really good slasher book. It was very much like the 90s slasher horror that I really enjoy. Of course, I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s, and I really like that sort of thing. So really looking forward to seeing how this story kind of comes to fruition, and if we're going to get even more Friendo books. So definitely excited for Clown in a Cornfield 2. And question number 5, biggest disappointment. And for this one, I'm gonna have to go with Beneath the Stairs by Jennifer Fawcett. So this is a thriller, and it has to do with kind of a haunted murder house and a coming of age horror, and there's a split timeline and the whole thing. So when I was reading the synopsis, I actually got this for a review copy from NetGalley, and when I read the synopsis, it was ticking all the boxes for me. It sounded fantastic. It sounded like it was going to be a great thriller. It was very highly anticipated, and of course, Jennifer Fawcett is also a Canadian author, so we want to support our fellow Canadians as much as we can. And when I read it, I was just so let down. I was so let down. The story dragged on forever. There were way too many subplots. There were way too many characters. And I just found that there were a lot of plot holes. Things were very convenient to kind of bring the story back around and make it make sense. So Yeah, I mean, I hate when that happens, when you're reading the synopsis and you're going through and you're like, I love all of these tropes. I love murder houses. I love fast-paced thrillers and stuff like that. And it just turned out to be something completely different. So definitely had to go with this one. And from what I've read, a lot of other people were disappointed in this book as well. So I'm really hoping that Jennifer Fawcett gets some help with her editing and all of that sort of thing, because I think it had a lot of potential and I think it could have been a lot better. So hopefully with her subsequent books, I will definitely give her a try again. But with this one, it just kind of fell flat. And question number 6 is the biggest surprise of the year. And for this one, I have to go with The Hay Bale by Priscilla Bettis. So Priscilla is a frequent commenter on booktubers channels. And I found out through another booktuber that she was releasing a novelette this year. So very, very short story. I believe it was only about 50 or 60 pages. And when I heard about it and I read the synopsis and everything, it sounded pretty good. And I was like, oh, you know, it'll be great just to sit down in an afternoon and read it. Nice little short story. And this story absolutely blew me away. It blew me right out of the water. It had all of the gothic feels. It had tragedy. It pulled at your heart. It did all of the things. And even now, and I read this story months ago, and even now, like if I'm, you know, doing something monotonous, every once in a while the story will literally pop into my head and I'm like, God, that was so good. It was such a good story. So I'm trying to spread the love of this story and this book as much as I can, because I think if you're a horror lover, you really got to read this one. It was fantastic. And I can't wait to read more stories by Priscilla. She's a fantastic writer, and I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for more stuff from her. And when more stuff comes out, I will gladly talk to you guys about it, because I think everyone needs to discover this author. And question number 7 is favorite new author. So this is either an author who is has just put out a debut or is new to you. And with this one, I'm going to go with Donald R. Guillory. And I read his book Magnolia Lane earlier this year. Another fantastic Southern Gothic horror. This was really, really good. And it had some subplots of racism and all of that sort of thing, both back in the 18th century and now, that people are dealing with. And this book had a surprising body count, I have to say. It was very gruesome. It was about this group of people who get stuck in this historic home during a tour. The road gets washed out by water during a storm, and they're stuck there, and they're getting kind of picked off one by one. And I loved it. I loved the story. I loved his writing style. It needed a little bit of editing work because it was a bit clunky in a few places, but I think it might have been the way it was formatted through Amazon. So that was the only thing that it just needed a little bit of help in that regard. But from what I hear, it's really difficult to publish books through Amazon, period. So I'm not going to fault him for that at all. But go check out this author, Donald R. Guillory. He has another book out called Bastards of the Bayou, which I want to pick up really soon. And he also has a fantastic TikTok channel where he talks about, I believe he's a history professor or a history teacher, and he talks a lot about Southern history. So definitely go check him out. His books are on Amazon, he's on Instagram, he's on TikTok, so definitely go check him out and pick up a couple of his books, because he's a fantastic writer and definitely my favorite new author that I've discovered this year. And question number 8 is newest fictional crush. And I gotta say, I don't have fictional crushes, so I think I'm just gonna skip this one. I mean, if I had to pick something, there are legacy characters in every generation from the show, so I won't give anything away, but there are legacy characters in here, and I would definitely have to pick probably one of my favorite characters from the show and who makes an appearance in this book. So like I said, not going to give anything away because I don't want to get into any of the story or how they're in there, but I would definitely have to go with that one. Sorry to be cryptic about it. And question number 9 is newest favorite character. So just going back to the Ravenous Dead, Kira is a character who obviously I found out in book number 1 about her and all of that, but she really starts to come to fruition in book number 2, so she's definitely probably one of my more favorite characters that I've read this year. I love how they're starting to develop her psychic abilities and how she's starting to communicate with the ghosts and in the cemetery and all of that sort of thing. So I would definitely probably have to go with Kira. So I'm doubling up on some of my answers here, but she is definitely the most favorite character that I've read this year. And question number 10, a book that made you cry, and I don't think any specific book has made me cry this year, but the book that made me the most sad, I guess I would have to go with, is Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka, The True Story of the Ken and Barbie Killers. So I listened to this on audiobook, and it was going through a lot of very detailed and very gruesome aspects of their upbringing, what they did, the murders that they committed. And if you've never heard of this pair, they are very famous, probably the most famous Canadian serial killers, and the story is just harrowing. And it didn't make me cry, but I was definitely extremely saddened and horrified at certain aspects that came up in this book. It was to the point where, and I listen and read a lot of true crime, and so I am used to reading details like that, but the details that came up in this book, it was almost to the point where I wanted to skip forward, but I didn't. And so if you have never heard of this pair and you're into true crime, I would definitely recommend picking up this book, because it was absolutely horrific. And so I kind of have a second part to this question. And so another book that made me cry, it wasn't because of the story, it wasn't because of the book itself, so it's not really a true answer, but I'm gonna go with The Time Watchers by Robbie Miles. And the reason why this book did actually make me cry was because when I read the afterword that Robbie wrote, he does mention me and the channel in the book, and I had no idea he was going to do that. So when I received my ARC copy of this book and I read the afterword where he was talking about so many other amazing booktubers and reviewers and Instagrammers and all the people who helped him with his writing career, I was very surprised and very touched that he mentioned me in here, and I did actually cry. I couldn't believe it. So the book itself didn't make me cry, but the author did, so I had to put this one in here for that question as well. And question number 11, a book that made you happy, and for this one, there was no other choice. I had to go with Paperback Crush, The Totally Radical History of 80s and 90s Teen Fiction by Gabrielle Moss. And I also read this on Audible as well. It is in their free catalog, so if you do have an Audible subscription and you enjoy 80s and 90s teen fiction, go in and read this book, because I was smiling the whole way through because it was so nostalgic, and it talked about a lot of the series that I read when I was growing up, and I'm very nostalgic for that time. The other thing that I really liked about it was it talked about so many books and authors and series and all of that I didn't even know existed, and now I can keep an eye out when I go out to used bookstores for these vintage wonderful series. And just the way that she wrote the book as well, it was hilarious, and the way that she had it laid out and all of that, it was, her whole personality came through, and it was fantastic. The narrator is fantastic, so I just smiled the entire way through while I read this book, and I couldn't wait to actually go out on my daily walk, because I would pop this in and listen to it, and it would always put me in a good mood. In the middle of the day during a really stressful work day, I would just put this on for a little while, and it always made me super happy. So this one was a real gem, and probably one of my favorite reads of the year. And question number 12, the most beautiful book that you've bought so far this year or received. And for this one, I've got to go with Mina and the Undead. So Amy McCaw very kindly sent me a copy of this book all the way from the UK, and she did sign it on the inside. So that's fantastic. I love the cover art, I love the font, but what I really enjoy is, you know, it has these sprayed edges, and the chapter, the introductions of each chapter has this light, you know, gas lamp light pole, and Even some of the chapter breaks have little bats and stuff. So it just adds to the whole reading experience when that kind of stuff is in there. And I'm going to be talking about this book a little bit later in a future video coming up here, because I did just finish it, you know, about a week or so ago. So I'm going to be talking about this coming up. But just to have such a beautiful book, it just, I don't know, for book lovers, it means so much more, and it adds to the reading experience when you have those little things in there. So definitely probably the most beautiful book that I've received in a long time. And then the last question is, what books do you still need to read by the end of the year? And so first off, I did start my Fear Street reread this year, so I'm reading everything in publication order. So I definitely want to get to more Fear Street because I have a long way to go. So want to read more of those. And the other one that I picked is The Midnight Club by Christopher Pike. I read this book as a kid. I can't remember a whole lot about it, but of course the show is coming out on Netflix October, I think. So I definitely want to get through the book before the show comes out, and I'm really hoping that they're going to do the book justice, because even though I can't remember a whole lot about this, because it's been about 30 years or so since I've read it, I do know it was one of my favorites, and it's very sad. So definitely want to get to this one fairly soon, because like I say, I want to get to it before the show comes out. And I actually want to get a better copy of this book too. So this one is good just for a reading copy, but it's not in great condition. So definitely want to get a new copy of The Midnight Club. So is anybody else excited for the show? Let me know down in the comments if you're planning on watching it on Netflix when it comes out in the fall. So there you guys go. That's everything that I have for the mid-year book freakout tag. Let me know in the comments if you guys have read any of these books. And also, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications, and leave me a comment down below because you know I love chatting with you guys. But until next time, stay spooky, everybody. Bye.